Hi, I'm Melanie Gabbi, and welcome to this series on stress and well-being. So, how to unlock 20 powerful ways to reduce stress and improve your well-being. The brain is an incredibly powerful tool, and we cannot disconnect the brain, the mind, and the body and the spirit. All of us have different experiences in our lives, but one thing that's fundamental in most of my practice over the last 20 years, whether I've been running services or working with clients directly, is that stress often precedes any other mental health issues. Of course, we're all different and we've all got different histories. But this is the top 20 ways that you can deploy to reduce your stress. But please remember, consistency is key. So anything that you start to deploy, even if you can just give it 5 or 10 minutes a day to start with, if you do something for at least 30 days, you should start to see results. If you're in a crisis or overwhelmed, you need to, I'll do a separate video on that, but you need to actually sort out the key things, the priorities when you're in a crisis. Get some support if it's really difficult. If you're overwhelmed, sometimes having time out, if you can, even for some people, going to sleep and having a break and a rest can massively make a difference. So welcome to the top 20 ways to reduce stress. But what is stress? So here's a little bit of a guide of what stress is and stress management. So I'm going to share what we know about stress and explore these effective strategies for reducing it. And something that when I was working in schools, teaching a lot of young people about, because the more we understand the way our brain and body works and reacts to different situations, as well as how to build up our resilience and well-being, the more that we can feel more empowered and in control of our lives, even though our lives can also be fairly uncertain in terms of what's happening tomorrow or next week. But we can put these things in that help us stay more balanced and in contact with ourselves. So the aim of enhancing well-being and mental health and happiness and abundance. Over the years, as I said, I've worked with thousands of people seeking support for depression, anxiety, and relationship difficulties, all of which are triggered or worsened by stress. So in this short video, I'll cover a little bit about what stress is, how to combat it, and share insights from both my personal and professional experience. I retrained, it's a second career, and qualified as a therapist in 1999. Since then, I pursued additional training in various therapeutic modalities to support people facing a range of different challenges. By 2008, I was running a mental health service in the UK. It was called a comprehensive CAM service, designed to support children, young people, and their parents and families to have better well-being and reduce any of the things that were impacting their mental health well-being and capacity to learn, grow and thrive. So I delivered a range of focused programs on mental health and well-being over the years. And despite my professional knowledge, I've personally experienced burnout twice, once seriously in 2000 and then later in 2003. A combination of different factors that can sit behind stress can be previous trauma, can be our mental attitude, the type of personality we've got, our approach to life, and how we view ourselves as men or women and the roles that we deploy, and whether or not we gain some satisfaction, meaning and purpose to the things that we do. So we are more aware these days about how important it is to enjoy a larger facet of what we do rather than just going out and getting money to put food on the table. Although I don't want to ignore the fact that with the current issues going in the government, people are feeling more and more squeezed and aren't really getting the same value for the money that they were getting maybe over 20 years ago. However, that is an aside topic, but an equally important one. So stress affects all of us. We're all liable to experience stress at some point in our lives, depending on different factors like family responsibilities, work demands, support systems, and those past experiences. So that's why it's really important to understand what drives us, what drives stress, and how to reduce it. And there are many ways to increase feelings of well-being, and it's all about finding what works for us. A lot of the things that we're now uncovering in research that have been around for a long time, people are starting to realize that some of the more holistic approaches also make an impact on our general mental health and well-being. So, what is stress really? Stress is it's a natural response to a perceived threat or challenge. So, it can manifest physically, emotionally, or mentally when we feel overwhelmed or unable to cope with a particular situation. We can feel stress. While short term stress can actually help us stay alert and motivated, over time, chronic or long term stress can really negatively impact our health, leading to issues of anxiety, depression, heart problems, and a weakened immune system. So, we know there's a correlation between mental health and our general well being. So, what are the top ways that we can deploy? Because even if our circumstances don't change, our relationships may be supportive or may be negative and toxic, and we may be going through life transitions. If we are going through a transitional period, it's really good to look at the basic things that we need to make sure we've got in place, like sleep, rest, water, decent food, a place where we feel safe, and got people around us that can support us when we're going through those trying times. And if we haven't, if we can seek professional support from a coach, from a therapist, then that can help you certainly when you're going through a transition. I particularly work with people, a lot of people who are going through transitions. So as we know, a lot of these things are probably going to teach you how to suck eggs, really, which is a phrase that means you've probably heard it. And these are things that I talk with clients around a lot of the time, that is certainly, like I said, with consistency, if you deploy them, can help reduce stress. But what I want to do is make these things more simple rather than coming up with a huge plan and then being even more overwhelmed by what can feel like the enormity of it. Because this is about practice, and that's why we call yoga teachers in practice, because we're always practicing and improving our journey. There's also something about accepting our circumstances, compassion for ourselves, and self acceptance, which are separate videos that can help reduce some of those internal dialogues and narratives that we have that can also bring us down. Negative thinking and mindset certainly has a massive role to play in the way that we experience life, the perception that we have on it, and the experiences that we may be going through at any time. So, of course, we know exercise regularly, we know it releases endorphins and improves mood and reduces stress. It also lowers cortisol, although we know that over-exercising can increase cortisol. And there's been a lot of research coming out about what happened to us in midlife and how we need to be mindful that sometimes by doing a lot of time in the gym, we may actually not see the improvements. So we've really got to think about what the goals are. But initially, for reducing stress, moderate exercise like going out for a walk 5, 10, 15 minutes every day, to the local shop, to the coffee shop, or even longer, especially if you're at the beginning of your journey, can really make a difference rather than trying to bash out 2 hours in the gym of lifting weights and running on the treadmill or walking uphill. So you really need to have a look at where are you right now and what are you already deploying that supports you. Mindfulness and meditation has come up in the research. And what do we mean by mindfulness? Well, I often talk to clients about mindfulness rather than introducing them to meditation straight away, because the idea of a lot of us in the West of sitting still and being able to focus on our breath without heaps of information, emails pinging through our mind, planning that we have to do, shopping that is coming up, all range of things that come in the mind. And of course, we know in meditation that is, what we call the monkey mind. It'll keep doing that until we keep practicing ignoring the monkey mind and focusing on our breath or focusing on a candle. But initially, it's 5 minutes out, taking 5 minutes out in the morning with your cup of tea and just listening to the sound of the birds, listening to your heartbeat, feeling what it feels like to sit in the chair that you're sat in, slowing everything down and turning off the distractions, stop scrolling on your phone, stop staring at the TV and stop playing games. We use a lot of those things for distraction, especially if we're feeling bored, our senses are dulled, or we're feeling distressed. They have their role, they're not evil, but it's really important to have a balance. But if we're overstressed, we need to reduce the noise and the things that are distracting us and get back to basics and deploy some of these really simple practices. So we know that it will reduce the emotional and physical effects of stress by calming your mind and increasing self-awareness. Deep breathing. So deep breathing, controlled breathing can trigger the body's relaxation response. So when we get stressed, we release stress chemicals and our heart rate and everything goes up. And when we start to focus deep breathing, at least 3 or 4 breaths, box breathing, 7-11 breathing, have a look on YouTube. There's loads of people that are teaching these things these days. If you start to practice that, but initially, if you can focus on your breath only for a few minutes at a time and practice that throughout the day, and even put alerts on your phone to remind you, because when we're stressed, we can be hunched over the laptop, we can be banging out those emails and really getting caught in sitting in that same position for 10 hours. We know that people are getting dry eye now for staring, and I'm one of them that stares at the computer for long amounts of time and have to tell myself to get up and take a walk. So that can be really important. We know that maintaining a balanced diet is also equally valid and important. And we know that diets rich in fruit and vegetables and whole grain and lean proteins certainly support brain health and emotional balance. And we also know there's a lot of research coming out around the impact of sugar and how that can, especially as we get into midlife, our bodies can have an overproduction of insulin, and then we can end up with glucose and resistance. And therefore, we need to really think about the amount of carbs that we have in our diet. When we're stressed and overwhelmed, it's really a case of maybe having a look at that when we've reduced our stress, but initially considering what are the kind of things that support us so that we're not as hungry, we are satiated for longer. And that can be eating more protein. Now, maintaining a balanced diet is so unique to everybody and I'm not an expert in diet. I just know over the years what's worked for me and what hasn't. And sometimes that changes and sometimes we need to do a review. I went to see a kinesiologist. I'm not a doctor, so don't take my advice as an expert opinion, but I went to see a kinesiologist about 2 years ago because I really wanted to work out that while I was physically working out, what nutrients might I be short of? Because most of us are short of something. And so with the kinesiologist, it was much easier to ascertain in one session and take the brain work out of it for me to work out what are the nutrients I might need to take. And does the protein shake cover most of those, or do I need a higher dose? So going to see somebody that can help you work out quite quickly if there's a deficit can certainly be a priority. However, you know that if you're lacking in taking certain foods, just to increase that, and planning around meal times can certainly, 1, save a lot of time, and 2, save the headache, or have fallen in the freezer every time you go to Tesco's, like I've done on a few occasions because I've been uninspired and not known what to get for shopping. Prioritize sleep. Sleep's incredibly important, and once again, it's something that I don't always take seriously, and then I pay the consequences after about 2 or 3 nights I've got not getting the right amount of sleep. So everybody's got a slightly different need for the amount of time that they need for sleep. But we also know there's a research organisation called the Human Givens. Therapists who are trained in that also look extensively at sleep, at the process of dreaming, and how those processes support us. And if we don't get the right sleep, how we can wake up feeling really zombied because we've either woke up during REM sleep or are having some very deep and real type dreams, and they can really affect the way that we feel when we wake up. That also means that you need to think about sleep hygiene before you go to bed. So with clients, I often recommend that you do not lay there at 10, 11 o'clock at night, reflecting on everything that went wrong in the day. It will increase the stress hormones in the body and make it really difficult for you to get to sleep. If you're being overwhelmed by stress, you might need someone to talk to, because otherwise we can start to wake up in the early hours of the morning. And that's certainly a sign that stress has overtaken, and we need to get some more support to put that in to some balance. Healthy boundaries is certainly something that many of us don't even realise, that even if we've got good boundaries, that we can slip on that sometimes. And that can sometimes be a lot of the women that I've come into contact with may keep saying yes to people, situations and things when actually they're going overboard, or the demands of the family are already hitting crescendo. So we really need to be aware of what we've already got on our plates and what we can say yes to. And it's can sometimes be difficult for people at work who don't want to admit that they are struggling with the demands of work. And some people can take on lots of pieces of work and churn them out. But as a manager, if I'm seeing someone working over, 35 hours a week in the office, I want to know what's the reason for them working all those extra hours. Long term, it will affect productivity and their capacity to function. And the longer that we ignore that, the more detrimental that kind of existence has to someone's well-being. And I'm speaking from personal experience. I've had periods of time in my own personal work life that really did mean that I was in the office early. I was studying courses. I was reading and writing them up at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, sometimes 5 o'clock in the morning. And then working a long day, managing 2 different teams, going through a consultation at work and a transition. And in that process, hiring multiple staff and managing budgets. So sometimes we topple over because we just cannot take on one more thing. So it's really important to know that. In terms of relationships, it's really important to understand what it is that you really have to do in the day, the work, what it involves, how you can keep up contact with people in relationships, and how you can help them understand and what the clear lines of communication need to be. Because if anyone is stepping over that and is really getting upset or irritated because you're not responding in a particular way, then you really need to address that, because that can start to show some signs of unhealthy or toxic ways of being in a relationship. So the more that you are able to communicate early on with anybody that you are dating or in your relationship, especially when you're going through a change and transition, you need support and not hassle or harassment. And again, that is a separate topic, but invariably our relationships impact our stress levels, our capacity to perform and function. Any woman who's at work who's got small children, who knows that anything can derail your capacity to work. When the children are sick, they've broken through another pair of school pants, or they've lost something. There's a multitude of things that we can manage, and it depends on our capacity to tolerate certain situations and our levels of resilience. Engaging in hobbies. Okay, so I work with a lot of people who have I've got no time, I'm working, I've got kids, I've got X, Y, and Z happening. If you can find one thing that you enjoy doing, that you can do in that 1 hour in the week to start the process, then that's a starting point. I started around 2016, getting really interested in photography, and I could, at the phone I was using like an iPad, I was taking it on my walks and I was taking pictures, and I really started to enjoy that process. And then when I started to get more time, I'd get on the road and purposely go and visit places and take more pictures. Hobbies, of course, can include anything that supports your mental health and well-being: gardening, going for walks, going into the gym, working with clay, being an artist, having paints at home. One of the things that I also found that worked for me is, because I was in my head and do a lot of analytical work in the daytime, that at the end of the day it was good to even just do things. I'm not that good at drawing, but I would doodle, and I started experimenting with pastel paint and acrylic and different paper, and Sometimes ended up with grey splodges, and other times ended up with something that was fairly nice to look at. So, but the process was enjoyable. The same for journaling. A lot of people, it can help you when you write down what's happening to you, what's gone well and what hasn't gone well. And going back to sleep hygiene, is if you can look over the day and have a look at, okay, there are certain things that didn't go well, write them in your journal. What would you do differently next time? Do you need to get some advice and support of a mentor? Do you need to read up on something? And what is it that went well? Often we don't celebrate the small wins, we wait for the big wins, but we need sometimes to support our self-esteem and well-being and our sense of value is to really look at those aspects of where we're doing okay and where we're flourishing and functioning. So connect with supportive people. A strong support network can help, but if you're an introvert, that can be a bit challenging. But finding people that are in your tribe that think like you, but also that can challenge you or that you can learn from, can make a massive difference. Again, it depends on your goals, whether or not you want the emotional, psychological support, you want people to share hobbies with, or you want to learn some things like going on personal self-development courses and learning what can enhance your journey and help you create your dream life. Practice gratitude. This is I think really underrated actually. This is about shifting the focus from stress to what already you've managed to manifest and achieve in your life that's going well. Or you managing to pay your bills on time? Have you got, books around you that you like to read? Are there simple things in life that regardless of what's going on that you can still enjoy? Is it time with your grandchildren or your children? You like playing with them? Gratitude for having some clothes in your cupboard. You know that if we can pay our rent and we've got a roof over our head, we're doing fairly well in terms of other parts of the world. But when we're feeling really depressed or angry, sometimes we feel like not thinking about what we have gratitude for. But it can help shift the mindset, and shifting the mindset is really key, fundamental to making a difference. Also, people can use coping mechanisms like drinking more coffee and alcohol, but there's various research on coffee, and it can be a great thing to take before you go into the gym because it can stimulate the muscles to switch them on, but not so great to use as a prop me up throughout the day, especially if you haven't eaten. People are starting to look at CBT or the power of medicinal mushrooms like lion's mane that can help with focus and attention. Again, I'm not an MD, a doctor, so please don't take my advice as specialist advice. But these are some of the things that are coming up in the research. I certainly use those products myself because anything that supports me to function well and improve my focus, attention and well-being, as well as reduce the capacity to be a workaholic, are certainly going to be in favour. Time management. Sometimes really simple practices that come from project management, especially time management, and thinking about your life as a project can sometimes really help define what kind of tasks you have on day to day and what are the additional tasks and how you manage the pinch points in your life and those times where stress is going to occur. And if you've had several times where there has been stress, like transitioning from having children to going back to work, or finishing work and starting to retire, or changing jobs and going into a different industry. They're all transitions that can be exciting but also daunting. So it's really good to think about the support that you need when you're going through a transition. And some of the best behaviours and things that we deploy can go out the window during those times. So it's just being aware of that, not having a go at yourself and having negative self-talk about how you've failed or anything like that, because sometimes we can have those deeper thoughts and feelings that are going on underneath us that can really sabotage the good work that we're doing. Getting outdoors makes a massive difference. If you're around forest and nature and lakes, it can help dissipate any of the stress and even the static that exists within your energy field. The jury is out when it comes to EMF and the impact that technology has on us, and living near electric lines and things like that. But we know that there are some products out there that look at harmonizing the body and making the body more susceptible to the ions in the air that support our functioning in regards to those that can diminish our functioning. So it's worth thinking about that on a basic level. I've got a colleague who does forest bathing. It's lovely. You can do mindfulness and meditation whilst walking through or sitting in the forest. Certainly sitting by lakes and by the sea can make a massive difference. Even just getting out for a few hours can really improve mood. If you've got a dog, we know that pet therapy is a thing, and that can support you to reduce the emotional overwhelm that you've got, and going for a walk certainly, makes your dog happy and can make you feel more uplifted. If you are stressed and you're at home and it's hard to get out, or you've got some disabilities, you can do some of these practices if you've got limits to your mobility. So progressive muscle relaxation, again, look it up on YouTube. But it just basically means lying down on the floor, on the sofa, on the bed, on your office, back of your office chair, and going through each muscle. And each time you breathe in, tighten the muscle, and then when you breathe out, release the muscle. And just see yourself breathing in the peace and breathing out the stress. And if you do that progressively in something that you do every day, you will start to notice. You'll also start to notice how different muscles hold on to stress. More laughter. So, when I'm going through stressful periods, in fact, I don't watch much TV, but there's nothing like a really good comedy or a film to just increase your mood and reduce those stress hormones. So that can be your favourite comedian, or just ringing up friends who make you laugh and help you switch state fairly easily. Reducing screen time. We know that staying on the screen for a longer period of time, I quite enjoy being on my computer. I enjoy researching, but I know that I need to counteract that by getting out, walking, being in therapy, and doing things that I enjoy. So again, that's about balance. So take those regular breaks, especially if you're sat like that, hunched up over a desk at work all day for 8 hours, 10 hours, staring at a screen. We need to, doing our exercises can also stop us having that fixed focus, because that's where we can end up with dry eye. And a lot more people are having eye problems now because the amount of time we spend on the screen. Engage in creative activities. So we know that stimulates the brain, promotes relaxation. And that can be anything, unwinding at the end of the day, doing art, sewing, rehashing clothes that you've got, thrifting, anything like that feels creative for you. Staying organized. Now, being organised is quite a tricky one. There's lots of people out there that are starting to identify as having ADHD type symptoms or have been diagnosed. And being organised is one of the things that actually they can find difficult. So it's a skill that if it doesn't exist within you, that you have to find techniques that help you have more organisation in your life, have a framework that you can adhere to so that you can focus in bite-sized chunks. And lots of us, especially now that we're used to short bites of information and dopamine hits, need to think about how we organise our environment. I've got my books fairly neatly lined up. My desk is really clear, but that's fine for me. That works. But also it's about how you organise your day-to-day tasks and activities, how you reduce the need to continuously shop, whether you can shop online or whether or not you go shopping once a week, how you think about the other aspects of your life. And having organisation can keep the stress at bay, but also being mindful that some things can come out the blue. But if we're fairly organised, my kids were quite sick when they were young, and I spent a lot of time in and out of hospital with both of them. And just knowing that the bills were paid, the rent was paid, and I had food in the cupboard, and we had all the right clothes for them, just made a big difference of me not having to worry about all those other things that go on. And certainly parents who have gone through that experience will resonate with what I'm talking about, because even just having to go to hospital is stressful enough when your child is sick, let alone when you spend large amounts of time there. So I know that the realities of life that hit people around death, illness, grief, loss, changes, divorce, all of those things are happening to somebody at some moment in time now. So it's what can you put in place so that you are prepared and have a fairly balanced attitude in life in case these other disruptions occur that are outside of our awareness and our control. Practice visualization. Guided visualization is great. It's a tool that we know in brain neuroscience really does light up different parts of the brain. Not everyone can visualize, and that's okay, because you can use language that stimulates the senses. And there are lots of YouTube guided visualizations that you can listen to. Playing them for 20-30 minutes in the day, if you can have some time out, can just give you that brain break. And if you play them as you go to sleep at night, can move you out of any stressful state that you've had in the day and gear your brain up for a different kind of journey. So peaceful scenes that help you relax and detach. And then when you need extra support, number 19 is seeking professional help when you need to. Now I'm going to do a separate video on what to consider when you are seeking professional help, so do look out for that. And then finally, pet therapy. I've not had a dog of my own, but I've borrowed a dog a few times from friends. And in one occasion, I had a beautiful mini schnauzer for about 3 months when a friend of mine initially asked me for 2 weeks, but I was in between work at the time to look after his dog, and I really enjoyed taking the dog out. In fact, the dog came on several trips with me, and a really well-balanced, well-tempered dog. And me and Lufa Vandross, yes, would take trips out, and I ended up looking after his dog for 3 months while he healed after a couple of operations. So I hope you've enjoyed listening to these top 20 tips on how to reduce your stress and increase your well-being. If you want the paper version of this, I can send it to you. Just message me, DM me in the comments, and I will get that across to you. So good luck, and I hope all this has been fruitful.